This is going to really offend some people, I think. If you have mastered your craft, it's time to go. It's time to get out of what you're doing. It's time to let it go. If you believe you have mastered your craft, get the out, because you are only preventing yourself from solving a bigger problem. And most of the people that are listening that have mastered their craft are terrified to get to the next problem, because they would have to let go of the person, the thing they built, the ship they're running, the captain that they are, the beliefs that they have, the success that they have. They would have to be a beginner again. And an artist would never run from being a beginner, but an entrepreneur, especially at the highest of high level, I think you, if you're listening, are afraid to be a beginner again. Here's what we're talking about today. We're going to talk about how being an entrepreneur and being an artist could and should be the same. We're going to talk about like how we get out of our own way as an entrepreneur and how that's similar as an artist. I've been fascinated by this because the more artists I talk to, the more like I think about talking to artists. And artists could be a lot of things, right? Painter, a musician.
Paint by number.
A what?
Paint by number.
Paint by... I don't know. Maybe the person that makes the paint by number, the idea, a writer. Absolutely. Yeah. Creative in some way. Like thinking about this, even thinking about somebody like
the person that writes some of our emails is a fabulous writer.
Is that right? Is that right? If you're listening right now, please send Marty some clearly much needed love.
What an artist that person is.
What a creative, what a transcendental writer. So here's where this came from, right? So think of like a Taylor Swift, right?
Who?
When
she dates that football player.
That guy. Think of anybody that's a prolific artist. Like when you think of a really prolific musician, who comes to mind? Like, again, transcends like time and all that.
Well, from my age.
From the 1850s? Yeah.
I mean, someone like Michael Jackson was like
Michael Jackson, nice.
Despite all his issues, the guy was an artist.
Madonna,
yeah,
Prince,
Madonna,
like some of these guys and gals, like they go way beyond 80s. Time. Yeah. What's the guy that has like thousands and thousands of records? I think of like Phil Collins, but that's not who I'm thinking about. Like, who did?
I mean, someone like Garth Brooks, who changed country music.
Yeah,
the way it's done.
Yep. Yeah. Anyway, you think of these like big names, right? Whatever period of time stands out to you, whatever your artists, your faves were, whether they were that big or not, doesn't really matter. Here's what's interesting about being an artist compared to an entrepreneur.
Really get artists on the show.
I want to. The foreshadowing. Okay, we can't talk about it. Here's what I think is interesting compared to an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur goes into business and is like, what skills do I need to know? And what do I need to learn? And how do I do all the things? They wear 1,000 caps. And then eventually, as they get better and better and bigger in business, they kind of hire for roles. And you build this out. Like a lot of our clients are on EOS and have that system in place where it's like right seats, right bus. Like that's part of it. But that's very different than an artist. The entrepreneur will morph often to whatever is necessary to make the business grow. The artist has a completely different approach. And this is where I want the discussion to kind of start today. An artist.
I'm glad I had time to prep for
it. Yeah. Now that you have had so much time to think about this. To be fair, I haven't thought about this in like a meaningful way, except for 4,312 times. The artist, though, will say, okay, I'm the lead singer, right? Taylor Swift, like I'm a singer-songwriter. Ed Sheeran, right? Singer-songwriter. That's all I'm going to do. How do I build a team around?
At least that's all we see.
Well, but this is sort of my point is like there's a team around these people that are making this stuff happen, but their whole pursuit, their whole passion is like, I want to do this and only these like 2 or 3 things. That's all I want to do. How do I get out of my own way and make sure that everybody around me is doing all the other shit? There's so much about this. Like, it doesn't matter what kind of genre of music you're in. If you're really good at singing or vocals or rapping, or you're really good at drums, if you're a really good drummer, you don't show up for band practice to play the guitar. You just do what you're great at. You just find your niche and you say, look, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it better than anybody else. And there's something about that mentality that I think entrepreneurs kind of miss, right? If we look at an artist, when an artist is really secure in what and who they want to be, like what they want to do and who they want to be, they don't make compromises on that. And I find that to be really important to look at as an entrepreneur. An artist will not be like, well, I dream of doing this and singing across the country and across the globe. I really appreciate being able to sing and perform and also do the songwriting and all the meditative, really deep digging that brings out the best songs and lyrics and experiences. I want to do that. But you know what I'm going to do? The books. I'm going to take care of all our taxes, right? Like the whole point of the dream is to do what you love and do it more. And I think entrepreneurs can learn a lot from artists that do this.
How does that person get out of their own? How do they get out of their comfort zone?
The artist, when it comes to like building the team around them,
or just themselves. Like if I'm going to be in this lane and I'm only going to do this, how does that person get out of that comfort?
Well, I think there's a relationship with money that's important. You got to be able to say, you know, I'm going to spend $7,000 for a band versus try to like ragtag my way through different instruments. That's important. So I do think there's an investment that comes with
You don't have like 30 instruments hanging off.
Yeah, you're not a one-man band, right?
Right,
a one-man band is a thing.
Yeah.
But it might also be like, well, if I perform in this venue, I might make $5,000. Or I could perform in this venue with a band. It could be me with, I don't know, like what instrument, like a piano, right? So I'm on piano. It could be me and the piano, and I can perform. I make for $5,000, or I can make $2,000 and bring a whole band in, and everyone that leaves this show is just going to be mind blown and come back for the next one and book again. There's something about this perspective.
I played clarinet.
I was recorder. I was a fucking wizard with the recorder. Mary had a little lamb.
Mine at least was a real instrument.
Good. You can't mess with me. Mary had a little lamb. Recorder. 1993.
Up on stage with your plaid pants.
That's right. The like clip on bow tie. Yeah. So the number two thing that perpetuates this is in music, it's okay and acceptable and supported for you to only play one role. Nobody in music would ever question you if you're like, I sing, I'm going to sing. They would just be like, well, duh, obviously. But in business, I think culturally and in entrepreneur land, we talk about this like, well, just do it yourself. DIY. It's like a DIY adventure all the time. I'm going to do my own marketing. I'm going to do my own branding. I'm going to do my own website. I'm going to do some of that is money related. And I get that. I was in that stage too. But there is something about an artist that like doesn't, I think artists get that because an artist kind of has hopefully the best ones I've been around really respect someone else's craft and creativity and
art
and profession, right? Like this is your profession. Okay. I'm not going to not pay you. Also, I'm going to let you do what you do and I'm going to do what I do. So like, I wouldn't go to someone that's really good on guitar and be like, hey man, I don't think you really need to like tweak your strings. Also, I don't want someone that is good at guitar to step into my world and be like, hey man, here's how you facilitate better when you're in front of 100 people. I just don't want that. But there is a respect that I think is garnered by that. The third thing that I think happens is an artist has a relentless pursuit of doing what they want to do more. Entrepreneurs are on a relentless pursuit to do what they do less. That's a fascinating mindset because the whole entrepreneur journey is like, I don't want to work anymore. So I'm going to work really, really hard so I don't have to work. The artist is like, bro, I will work for the rest of my life to do this.
Because it doesn't feel like work.
It's not work. It's art.
It's more of a craft.
And you work through it, right? But it's your love. It's your passion. It's what you're excited about. It's the whole reason that you exist is the art. So I think there's a deeper commitment to it. Like an artist would never, I don't think this is even possible. maybe if you're listening and you can help me close this gap or close this loop, please help me.
Or if you have a recorder for him.
Or if you have a recorder. You ain't ready, bro.
I can't wait till Emerson plays the recorder.
I know, right? I know. It's going to drive me insane.
I'm going to get him a drum set.
Yeah. Like, so I guess what I'm saying here is that I don't think an artist could exit. A business owner could
exit their craft.
Right. Like a business owner, you could build a business and exit. An artist, I don't, maybe there's a way. Like you could have an album do really well and not have to work for a while. You could have an album like sell to a label. I don't know. Maybe there's a way. If you're listening and you know the way, let me know.
One hit wonder.
But still, it's not like you sell that and ditch that old thing. You just kind of move on to another endeavor. Like I think that's one thing. But like the prolific ones have found what they love and they keep on going. To me, the one hit wonder crowd is largely like they're not committed to the longevity, right? That's a whole different piece. But like those three things I think are significant to entrepreneurs who are trying to figure out like how do I actually play this game for a long time?
Well, I mean, the question that comes to mind is I would bet, and I don't know this because I don't work with all of our clients, are very logical thinkers.
Yes, very engineering.
And how do you tap into that creative side that has, for many people, has been beat out of them? Like,
yes,
you cannot be creative and successful.
Correct.
At the same time. How do you help someone tap into that creative energy that's there, but has been dormant?
Okay. So here's my, I wouldn't call this a challenge. Here's the lens that I look at that through.
Even an engineer, you have a very different perspective because you're in it.
I'm in it. Yeah. And I'm working with guys that are very logically oriented, very analytical, and often like engineers.
Yeah.
Like they built a business.
They would be your stereotypical business person.
For sure. Yeah. It's organized. It's structured. It makes sense. All those things. The creative way that an entrepreneur thinks is in the product. So when they look at the world, when we look at the world and say, hey, I see a problem, I'm going to solve it. The approach is creative. Where the creativity dies and the entrepreneur sort of surrenders to the like more
expectation,
to the expectation of everyone else, is in the operations, in the admin, in the oversight, in the leadership. Like that's where it becomes very like stale.
And it's like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, it is kind of like that. What I know though is that we can learn a lot from very, very, very successful artists. And it goes back to those couple things. If we find what we love, there was a conference it sort of ran tangential to ours. Cody Sanchez was speaking and she made a comment that I really love. You never retire from a life that you love. Never. This is why artists like the Rolling Stones and Aerosmith and all these people, like they're still touring. They're 65. they're 70 years old. Like Willie Nelson was touring. Like there's like all these, the way that it's perceived is like, hang up your hat, man. Like, because we as consumers of music will say that.
Yeah, we've made retirement into that.
We've like projected the American retirement dream into what it means to be an artist. But like for them, it's like, dude, if I get to still sit on stage, maybe there's not 10,000 people there, maybe there's 1,000 people here. I'm good. Like I don't do this for the money anymore. I'm just going to do what I love. Why are we mad at that? I wouldn't be mad at that. That sounds great. I'm just going to go play music in front of people that I don't know, that I know appreciate my music, and that hopefully I can drive some light into their lives. Well, why not? So there's a reason that that's happening.
I think of someone like Dolly Parton, who is still out there doing her art, but also giving back in so many different ways.
It almost becomes that, right? And we've seen artists that have eclipsed success to such a magnitude that's crazy, come back to the other side and say, like, I'm just going to give it away. I'm going to give my money away. I'm going to give concerts away. Like, I'm going to make it accessible, whatever it is. Or I'm just going to show up and play and then leave. Like, people don't even know this stuff is happening. one of my favorite artists through his saga of music has been Frank Ocean. And I don't know his story intimately, but I know enough about it to like really recognize that he's I think, and Frank Ocean, if you're listening to this, we got to get you on the podcast, man. I would love to talk to this guy. Like his music was the best R&B I'd ever heard.
Let me start typing a message now.
That's right. Reach out. Like his music was the best R&B. His mixtape, the Lonnie Bro collection and Nostalgia were the best R&B I'd ever heard in my life. And like following his saga, it seems like he really just likes the art, but the limelight and like the pressure of that maybe wasn't as alluring as having a life of an artist, right? An artist has a quiet demeanor to them that I deeply respect, because in order to pull out some of that really connective music, you got to go through really deep emotions to process to be able to pull it up. And I think that's true in entrepreneurship too. Like you got to go through deep stuff to be able to pull out the best magic. But to circle back to like the engineer, I think the engineer's creative process is often lost because they're like stuck in the weeds rather than playing what they started with, which was, I'm going to solve a problem. I'm going to get really excited about solving a problem.
Is that how you define what an artist is?
What do you mean?
Someone who solves a problem.
That's a great question. I think an artist depicts a problem.
Thank you. For a Friday afternoon, that's
a great question. I think an artist depicts a problem.
Depicts a problem.
I was talking to somebody yesterday about this. Like
so like a person that does movies can portray a problem that exists in the world, but it's almost it's less personal because it's on a screen. I'm looking at it through a different lens.
Yeah. I mean, I think you do a good job of extracting from stories and extracting from poetry and things like that. The biggest part, most important part of solving a problem is labeling a problem, depicting a problem, right? Here's a problem. And artists do a great job of depicting social injustice, labeling, like emotional blocks and challenges, identifying the personal crises that happen in transformation and growth.
Do you think that's why we've kind of labeled them as less than in some way, less important? Like arts are often I was just reading an article from back home in Pennsylvania where arts programs are being cut in different schools. Like we'll still bolster sports, which is good,
right?
But why did we cut that element out art when we already stamped out for so many people?
I do think that's a rabbit hole question, because we could talk about the education system for a long time. Maybe we should. And
that's someone who, I mean, I was in the band for all those years, so art was very much a part of
for sure.
I was.
The world that we are marching into will demand way more creatively than it ever had.
Yeah, in the big time.
If
I've heard it put this way by a spiritual writer, that the biggest crisis we face is imagination more than anything.
Completely agree with that. I would probably use a different word, but I love the idea of like we're approaching the death of the imagination.
Yeah,
in many ways.
Yeah.
To use that phrase. So I think that the reason that creativity has largely been sort of squandered and neglected and somewhat downplayed is that it's very misunderstood. And in order to embrace creativity, you would have to embrace chaos and like lack of value. Like there's a lot of creativity that is not good. There are a lot of production. There's a lot of music. There's a lot of words that are not good.
Where would we be without the creativity of someone like Steve Jobs?
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's a great example, right?
Most of our lives revolve around this
new phone.
That's something he created.
Apple's $1 trillion company.
Yeah.
It's a $2 trillion company. But his creativity in many ways is labeled to like this one thing. If you want a good book to read, if you're tuned in, check out Creativity Inc. It documents his whole history. Creativity Inc.
Oh, Inc.
It talks about Pixar, his history with Next, his first, I think there was a second company, like all these really interesting things. A lot of creativity.
Most people don't know that's where Pixar started.
That's right. My point is that like when we think about a creative, we think about their one thing, Steve Jobs, iPhone. What we don't think about are the 56,311 things that did not work. And unfortunately, I loved, there was an interview with Matt Damon and Ben Affleck talking about Good Will Hunting and like that writing process, because that's where their journey started.
Yeah.
And what they were
Robin Williams. I mean, that was
oh man, great, such a great film.
Yeah.
Also, that script, so that script was it was sold in a way that was really unique. Like they sold it and then they had to get back revenue. Like it was a whole experience for them, but they wrote it together, passing bad ideas back and forth. That's a creative process, bad ideas back and forth. So I'm going to give you a bad idea. And rather than the quote, Matt Damon was so good in sharing this. I think he was actually quoting Ben. It was like, don't judge me for my worst ideas. Let's just build on them and create something magical from it. I actually would really love to I'm going to look up this quote real quick.
I mean, I think where would we be without something like Pixar? All the Toy Story movies are through Pixar. Like so many great movies
for sure
have come through.
And sometimes you just don't know. That's the artist's risk, is like you got to jump on your idea. So here's the quote. Judge me for how good my good ideas are, not how bad my bad ideas are. And what I love about that quote is that it represents that there is a duality. You will have a lot of bad ideas before you have any good ideas. And the artist, in my opinion, if you listen, so I absolutely love Ed Sheeran's music. And I've followed his albums all the way through and through, because I would sit up late at night and repeat and just play the album on repeat and work for hours. So anytime I play one.
And he made it to Ted Lasso.
I know. He made it to Ted Lasso. Yes. So whenever I listen to those older albums, I can go back to that period of time and be like, oh my God, I remember like building a business and starting from scratch and like sitting up late at night and like
the novelty of music.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a timestamp.
Yeah.
So I think about the risk that's taken as an entrepreneur, right? And these albums are like, if you listen to that guy's first tracks, you will be astonished at how bad he was. And he talks about it, like success will never teach you, failure will. But listen to his first album. He did it on Howard Stern Live. It's terrible. And what's fascinating is he loves it.
Another example of an artist of his own craft.
Howard Stern?
Yeah.
Also very undervalued initially. The thing about art is
now he's like, I think he's at his best now.
Yes. Well, I was just going to say, like, art persists, right? If you really have a passion for art, it will persist. And entrepreneurs, again, could stand to learn a lot from an artist, because an artist does it in theory, and I think at the highest level, without connecting to the outcome. I might get paid. This might be a smash of an album, but I'm going to put my fucking heart on the line. And I'm going to put my soul in these words and lyrics. I'm going to put my soul in this canvas. I'm going to put my soul into this movie. And if it tanks, my art will persist. That's really hard to do. To put a movie out and like Rotten Tomatoes gives it like 20%. That's hard. That's fucking hard. When people slam it in the newspaper and say like, don't go see it. Like that's hard. When your Broadway film that you've been writing for years flops in the first week, that's hard. And yet you keep going.
And I've seen some great movies that had bad reviews, but when I went, I'm like, why did this get such a bad review?
Well, the world's a critic, right? The world is a critic. I like movies for the movie experience. I like escaping my world for a moment and just plugging into something. And in that, get to have a lot of fun, like talking about like, man, what was this? And why did, so I think this is where maybe a bridge between entrepreneurship and artists can exist. When I go to a movie, I don't think, did I learn something? Did I get something? Like, was it the best movie ever? What I think about is like, what was going on with the writer? What what perspective did they have to write it this way? Whether it's a thriller or it's a Marvel movie or it's a rom-com, like what were they experiencing that this was their perspective? Because a lot of truth is said in jest, and a lot of experiences are told in tales.
All of it is a lens through your own life.
That's right. So I think that what I appreciate most about artists is that they write in an uninhibited fashion. Because if you're going to put it out in the world, even if it flops, like a mega flop, you kind of know, and know might be the wrong word, you kind of understand that on the backside of your art is another piece of art. And I think entrepreneurs don't have that same belief, because I've had businesses fail.
Does the artist I think also has to get to a point where it's very personal for them, obviously. And I know this as someone who has written, but how do you separate you almost have to separate yourself from it once it's out there, because it can also be, how do you not take it so personally when you're being criticized for something that really is your life?
It's like it's you.
Yeah.
Right. You're being judged for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When in reality, they're judging a song or they're judging a piece of art.
For sure.
But for you, it's very personal.
Well, but that's true in business too, right? That's true as an entrepreneur. Like when someone says, especially when you're first in it, man, someone doesn't buy your product or says like, hey, we got to cancel our agreement. That hurts. Like I've had people even, man, I can remember getting a message that was like, hey, I know we couldn't make these sessions work. I'm going to add a couple more, and I don't want any more. Like, ouch. Damn, that's harsh. And that's the artist process. Like you have to be willing to get those rejections, even to get bad repetition or bad performances in the mix to be able to be successful. And where I think entrepreneurs get kind of hung up.
But because in reality, you're creating a story around it.
For sure.
When it could be something that is very harmless, but you're creating a story.
And entrepreneurs are good at that too, right? They create a story around it. If an entrepreneur,
that person might just not have the time to do it, but
yeah.
I've created the story that they don't want it. They don't.
Well, so this is where I think we can learn another lesson from artists as business owners. If an artist fails, he makes more art. He or she make more art. The entrepreneur, though, thinks that if they do bad business is over. That's not all artists, nor is that all business owners. Still, really good artists will just be like, well, I'll just make another album. I'll just do it again. I'll persist. Like a committed, really successful artist. If you look at them, their whole climb up, they're like, if this is a bad song, I'll just go make more songs. Like, duh. Like, that's what I'll do. I'll just keep going until I'm really, 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 really good. But a business owner might be like, well, first business flopped. I guess I'm not a good business owner. Second business stopped. Oh, I just declared bankruptcy. Oh, well, I guess I'm not cut out for this. And that happens in art too. Don't get me wrong. But I think it's fair to learn the lesson from really prolific artists that like the art persists. Keep going. Keep making your art. Keep solving problems. There's a stat. Let's see if I can Google it real fast. Like the average age,
hey Google,
of an entrepreneur, of a successful entrepreneur. So across U.S. is 36, down from 40 in 2021.
That's the success percentage?
No, that's the average age of entrepreneurs is 36. The average age of...
That's late 30s.
Yes. The average age of a millionaire...
You got to admit that 36 is late 30s.
I didn't hear anything you said. I stopped listening. The average age of a millionaire is 55 and older. Just 2.5%, less than 2.5% are under the age of 35. So I think there's another stat. I don't even know how to query this on the fly, but there's another stat about like the average successful entrepreneur is like 2 or 3 or maybe 4 businesses in by the time they get there and they figure it out.
But
And
that number is on the rise for millennials. I feel like I read that somewhere that
the number of entrepreneurs,
and successful millionaires, however you want to describe that, is on the rise with millennials.
meaning the number is going down, like
The
average age.
the average age is millennial age, but the number of people who are successful
The
is
number of people. Got it. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, there's a lot of money to be made. There's a lot of opportunity out there. We are also in the last 3 to 5 years much more open culturally here in the States to a brand new company and a brand new idea. It's almost cool to have bought from a new company. It's almost like pop culture to be like, oh my God, I just found this new company. They're trying this thing.
does that feed into this idea that what we lack is imagination, or whatever word you want to use, that people are starving for something that's different?
Different and authentic.
Yeah.
Different and authentic, which is art, right? That's what art is meant to be, is like different and authentic. You don't want to be different without authenticity. You want to be different and authentic in the way that you present your art.
Like and this is the first example that comes to mind, but I'm sure there are other better examples. How many Friday the 13th movies do I need to see? It's the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
At some point, it's not art anymore.
Yeah.
It's like we have nothing else to do, so we're just going to keep recreating what is.
I would like you listening to help me figure out this like, how many movies are original themes compared to sequels, prequels, remakes, tremakes. Like, it just seems like is another rendition of the same thing. Like,
Some are good at it.
I agree. I love Spider-Man. I grew up a comic book kid. Like, we've had like 3 different Spider-Men in my lifetime. They all came together in one epic moment of comic book history. Love that. But also, we've remade the damn series so many times. Like,
but the character is the same. The storyline changes.
Correct.
So many of them, the storyline never changes.
Fair. But here's what I love about music in the context of art. As culture changes, music changes with it. Sometimes music guides it. Sometimes music follows it.
Sure.
That different,
or punches it in the face,
or depicts it, right? It sort of presents it in front of you, like, hey, this is a problem. We got things to deal with. I think back to like some music, some art, some representations that I've seen that really help me understand what is the problem. And you can't really solve a problem until you get there. But entrepreneurs are really, really good, I think, in my experience of coaching through their problems and experiencing their own work kind of in vitro at saying, hey, I'm really committed to this problem. I'm really committed to like this. But because we're so headstrong on this particular thing, we almost can't see another version of us. And artists, in order to stay relevant, go through a rebirth, like a total death of who they are to become something new. I think of Justin Timberlake. That kid started singing and making albums at like 13.
I was going to say, literally a kid.
Like a child singing and performing. And then every album has done such an innovative job. Like, hate his music or love his music, that's not even the point. Every album has such a different flavor. To do that as an artist, you got to dig.
Think about how you're changing at that. Like, your voice is changing and everything else at that point in your life.
Dude, at 13, I was playing N64 and eating Jolly Ranchers.
And your recorder.
I wasn't playing a recorder at 13. Okay. I was way beyond Mary Had a Little Lamb at that point.
Twinkle, twinkle.
Yeah. I elevated to Twinkle, Twinkle. There is, though, like, as we think about his story, and again, I don't know that we can comment on the inner workings of it, but externally,
we can't, because we don't know it.
It would be awesome to find individuals that we can ask about this, because there has to be a rebirth. You got to go through your crisis, your hardship, your innovation, your challenge, your emotions. You got to process all that, and then, like, almost as a way of taking out the trash, you make an album. But entrepreneurs, I think, get locked into like, this is who I am and this is who I'm always going to be. And I'm always going to run the business this way. And like, I want to get to the next level.
No different than the person who is in corporate world.
It's no different. No, not at all. I think that if an entrepreneur that has mastered their craft, this is going to really offend some people, I think.
It's about time.
It's about time. If you have mastered your craft, I'm holding up bunny ears if you're on audio. If you have mastered your craft, it's time to go. And
time to get out of what you're doing.
It's time to get out of what you're doing. It's time to let it go. If you believe you have mastered your craft, get the fuck out, because you are only preventing yourself from solving a bigger problem. And most of the people that are listening that have mastered their craft are terrified to get to the next problem, because they would have to let go of the person, the thing they built, the ship they're running, the captain that they are, the beliefs that they have, the success that they have. They would have to be a beginner again. And an artist would never run from being a beginner, but an entrepreneur, especially at the highest of high level, I think you, if you're listening, are afraid to be a beginner again.
Oh, you've built your tower so high that
that's right.
That's
like a great way to say it. Yeah, you built your tower.
I can't fall. How am I going to allow myself to fall?
I don't want to be a peon, right? I don't want to be a basic. I worked so hard to not be basic anymore. Now I have to go back. You want me to go back, Aaron? Like, why would I go back? But an artist, right? So this is another piece of like artistry that I love. An artist, they will go to a place that is different from the projected place that they're in to learn. They'll go to the slums and listen to what's happening culturally. They'll go to a foreign country and like connect with the locals and figure out what's happening culturally. They don't want to be in the noise because there's no magic in the porcelain.
This goes back to the question I had asked earlier about the artists putting themselves in uncomfortable situations. That's how they do it.
Mm-hmm. They go to where the people are and they learn what they're experiencing. And entrepreneurs, right? We hit our exit, got a couple mil in the bank. We hit like a big year that like summits us to a new place. We make 7 figures a year. All of a sudden cash is great. Okay. I don't got anything to worry about. Why would I go to the dive bar? I don't want to go to the dive bar. There's nothing to be gained at the dive bar. I'm not that person anymore. But that's where the magic is. That's where you find the problems to solve. So I think there's this like perpetuation of disconnection that happens in entrepreneurship that is antithetical in art, because you go back to connection. You go back to your roots. You go back to where do I find people? Where do I find people that are about art? Well, art is connective to the masses when it's rooted in reality. Entrepreneurship almost is this perpetuating game of like, let me get further and further and further and further away from the place I started.
Separate myself.
Yeah, I want the fence. I want the big house. I want to be in a big area.
That goes beyond entrepreneur though. That's the American way.
That's the American dream, right? That's what we're told.
Separate myself.
Okay, here's another one.
I can't wait.
Oh, hello. You want me to stop and play Mary Had a Little Lamb?
I could still hear that sound in my head. That recorder.
You can too. I know. Yeah. Everyone listening can hear that sound. It's such a brittle sound.
Yeah,
it's
like your fingers on the chalkboard.
Well, I would say that. Yeah, like, oh man, that has a whole different sound. But the recorder just sounds like.
Although some people might not know what a chalkboard is.
That's true. Yeah. Well, when you're born in the 1850s, when I think of the recorder, I hear cheap plastic and like hot breath. that's
and spit flying out.
Okay. Third thing.
Oh yeah, back to what we're talking about.
As an artist becomes more successful, I think they express more fully. And in entrepreneurship, I find that the more successful we are, we actually try to blend more. Maybe this is like a read in just my experience and the people that we've worked with, but here's what I've seen. 7-figure revenue, 8-figure revenue, 9-figure revenue. Like as you go down that track, it's almost like I don't want to be seen anymore. I want to retreat to my home. There's so much pressure on me. I don't want to make decisions. Whereas the artist will be like, okay, as this thing grows, how do I get out and talk to people more? If you're famous, it's a whole other nightmare, but there's almost like let me get more me that is happening.
But doesn't the success come by becoming more you?
Well, ideally it does, right? If you're pretending, then we've seen this, like it sort of collapses.
Right.
But yeah, the artist grows to be
Which
more
is weird.
themselves.
Like someone like Taylor Swift, when you hear criticism of her, it's rarely about her music. It's about her. Yeah. It's like, how does that happen when her life is about her music? I mean, she's the best example I can think of with that. But I personally rarely hear stuff that criticizes her music. You hear criticism of her as a person.
Who you don't know.
Correct.
Right. You don't know what she's like outside of this. And
is that your own envy of this person? You're not going to ever be that person and have that success.
So she's gone on record also saying, like, this is a satire. I'm writing a satire. You think my life is like this, so I'm going to write a song like this. I forget what song.
I don't know her music well enough.
There was a song that she wrote that had the same chords as one of my favorite songs, "Stand By Me" by the Temptations. Let me see if I can find the name of it. Okay, so the original of this is Benny King.
Sounds right.
Yeah, Temptations was not at all what I'm thinking about.
I knew it wasn't Temptations.
Yeah, I'm thinking about a very different
Temptations
song.
Were women. It's definitely not a woman singing that song.
Yeah, it's not at all. Yeah, not at all right. I was wrong. Definitely not even close. Stand By Me has
Stand
the same
By Me
chords.
then became the movie Stand By Me by, I believe, Stephen King.
Nice. Well,
artist of his own right.
So Taylor Swift wrote a song called Blank Space, and I'm at some point during that album's release, she was sharing that like she writes a lot of satire, and that song is all about like I'm gonna write what the world thinks my life looks like with dating, with men, with all this, and to put yourself out there like that is incredibly brave and courageous. I think entrepreneurs are also incredibly brave and courageous to be able to do and build business. I think that's really important. And somewhere in between that is, how's an entrepreneur continue to be brave? Because that to me is one of the signifying differences between an artist and an entrepreneur. The artist will continue to be brave because that's what art demands. An entrepreneur, if they get their $8 million exit, they like fade into the distance because they've solved their problem and they're out. And ideally, what I think I love about entrepreneurs and working with entrepreneurs that want to break through to the next level is that they actually have a perpetual engine for solving the world's biggest problems. I'm so passionate about like working with entrepreneurs because depending on your lane, your niche, like it might be a really small keyhole that you're working in, but you're meant to solve big problems, man. Like you got a great mind. Don't waste it. But you got to keep going with your art. Even if you're cushy comfortable, even if your next 1,000 generations are set up, what do you do?
But do they see it as an art?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, that which is why I asked the question at the beginning about how do you tap into that creativity when it's something that is often squashed out of us. That's not going to give you the success the world has told you that you can do with art.
Here's how I would define creativity, because we were talking about like the loss of imagination. Creativity is the result of a zone without judgment. It's got to be a zone, right? What's the zone? The zone is we're solving a problem. The zone is we're making music. The zone is we're painting. The zone is we're decorating a space. But the only way the creativity can exist is to be in a zone without judgment.
Is the zone always solving a problem? Like even your artwork in some ways solves a problem. It might be an internal struggle that you're facing.
That's fair.
But it's still solving a problem of some sort. A problem that more than likely someone else is experiencing. And so the art transcends the problem.
Well, we're back to the original point. I don't think it always
I don't
solves
remember
a problem.
the original.
It depicts a problem. So that piece depicts a problem. Like it's hanging in my house. Like that piece, I remember painting. That piece has 36 layers. I counted each and every single one. That piece wasn't about solving the problem, it was about depicting a problem that I was experiencing at the time.
But in the process, does it help solve the problem?
Well, yes, because solving a problem is 90% depicting a problem, right? Like we talk about this in business all the time. If you can accurately label and discover and depict and dissect and outline a problem, you're almost to the way of solving it. It just becomes complex to solve problems that you can't depict. And there's a common experience I think we as entrepreneurs have had where we don't want to talk about problems. Like, I want solutions. So we talk to our team, we talk to our friends, and we're like, I want solutions. But if you can't accurately share what the problem is, if you can't define the problem, you can't solve the problem. And I think artists do a great job at defining the problem.
I'm just thinking of my past. I could almost say I wrote and preached my way out of ministry.
Tell me more.
That in many ways was the art for me, was writing and preaching. I am good at both.
Let's use a different word than preaching, because preaching has a particular connotation. What were you doing? I know you were a preacher, but like, what were you actually doing? You were speaking.
Speaking, yes. And there were plenty of times, especially when I was preaching, where I'm like, wait, did I just say that? Because something clicked in that moment of actually speaking.
You were in like flow state.
Yes.
It wasn't premeditated.
Correct. Oh yeah, it was never premeditated. I knew how I was starting. I knew how I was ending. That was about it. The rest kind of came together.
That's definitely artist esque.
Right. And eventually all those words, because it's words of speaking, but also writing, where the words finally catch up to me.
Nice.
And I would say that I wrote and I spoke my way out of ministry. The art got me out. It may have gotten me in, but it also got me out. Which is, it's like the craft of being the preacher was, for me, was always, what's the message I know that they're expecting? How do I turn it on its head? Nice.
Yeah, depict a problem differently, right? Different and authentic.
Because the old way of
there's some cool themes coming up today.
The old way of looking at it just doesn't work anymore.
Doesn't work. Yeah. It doesn't land, and people have heard it 1,000 times.
Correct. So they tune you out.
Yeah. Why would they listen? Yeah.
That's why I was good at it.
Yeah. Oh, I have no doubt you were great at it, man. Even to what we do today, I think what has really landed with clients, you do a lot of coaching for the number twos of our clients. You do a lot of work with homogenizing the business and making sure that things are consistent with brand and communications. And I think what has been very clear in your growth through that process to today is that you have a sense of the art of the business, right? The soul of the business and the needs of the business, which are business, and numbers and things happening. But if there is a compromise, you don't compromise the heart and soul. You don't compromise the art. And
that's always been the case for me.
Yeah. And I love that about you, that you are taking the time to pay attention to what cannot ever be taken back. Because if you go the route of business, this is,
But the typical way of doing business that we have become accustomed to is it's always compromising the soul, because it's all short-term gain.
It's like
people are not playing long-term.
Yeah, you're playing
game.
a yard game, not a big one. This is I think a big testament to what you're saying and to what we're really here on this particular episode to talk about.
An episode which I knew nothing about coming in. Just to remind people.
Nobody did. When you get in business,
if they have any doubts, we don't plan it. We just do it when we get it.
Well, it's worked out pretty well so far. Also, this is what being a coach is. I can't plan. I mean, there's a structure to the session.
Right.
I can't plan for what your last week was, what you did over the last week. Some people come in with some deep shit or some epic, amazing discoveries. Like, I got to be on your toes. An entrepreneur will sacrifice the art for the business. An artist will never. No. And they'll walk out. Like, people have again, especially like really prolific artists. That doesn't mean they made a lot of money, but really prolific artists, really good artists will walk out and be like, I will not give this up. I'm out. And there's something about that commitment, that bravado, that spirit of, I will not take the art from the artist. You can't take it out.
Did you ever see the movie Scent of a Woman? Al Pacino?
Yeah. Where's one? Yeah.
Yeah. The end of that movie where he's sitting in defense of the student, like, makes the point that this person's soul is intact, that he cannot be bought and sold so easily by money in order to stay there. That there's something much deeper going on.
That's a great movie.
Way more.
Great movie.
It is a phenomenal movie.
Yeah, he did a great job.
Hoorah!
Hoorah!
He's so good in that movie.
Yeah, that's a great movie. Depicts a problem.
Yeah.
Right. The lesson. So I spent a little bit of time pursuing art and talking to artists. There's an author. Her book is actually right there, named Carol Michaels. She was a coach to a lot of artists. I met her because I was pursuing.
What's the name of the book?
How to Survive and Prosper as an Artist.
I can't see it from where I'm sitting.
No, but it's a really good one. And she's done many editions, like 7 editions. I probably owe her a phone call. Remind me and I'll call her. I met her because I was pursuing professional art. I had been hired to commission a painting for somebody, and like that whole thing unfolded. And I was like, I'm going to write about art and how to make art a business. And in a way, this is my art. Like, I think it's our art, right? That we're building here. I met her, and speaking, she was in her 70s when I met her, might be in her 80s now. But Carol was spending a lot of time around artists who had a difficult time believing in themselves, didn't think they were worthy, were selling their art for like $300, but it would take 40, 50 hours.
Common with artists.
Super common. I happened to get, I won't say lucky. I was fortunate that I had a little bit of business experience before I sold that first piece to be able to be like, all right, this is probably going to take me 40 hours because I have no idea what I'm doing. So even if I'm only charging $10 an hour and the supplies are $200, I can't charge you $100 for the painting. I knew enough to do that. But the process of like surviving and prospering and growing as an artist, and the conversation around art that I find is really difficult compared to entrepreneurship, is like, charge more money. This is where entrepreneurs are much, much better at this. They're like, charge more money, know your worth, go for value. And the quantification in art is much more abstract. So it's tougher to be like, well, this is what it's worth. Like, what's the painting worth? Well, how do you say $60,000? I don't know.
Right. Because it feels very subjective.
It's very subjective. And if, it's really what the buyer is willing to pay, which is true in business, but harder to quantify in art. But I learned a lot from her. And as I was writing about art and studying what she had done, and she learned a lot, like about grants and all these things related to pursuit of art in public matter. One thing she told me when I first met her, she was like, Aaron, I don't meet many young people that want to really make a business out of art because it's such a long game. It's so long to get really good at anything. And if you've like finished your schooling degree where you spent $200,000, you and I have roots in Baltimore, like Micah is $200,000 to go to school for 4 years. And if you can't monetize, I don't know what your loan is after that, but if you can't monetize your art, it becomes really difficult. And then you give up really fast. That part is, I think, true with both entrepreneurship and artistry. But where I think,
and it's hard when the bills are coming in and you have to pay loans and all that kind of stuff. I get why people quickly turn away from it.
Yeah. Do what you can.
Yep. Do what you have to.
Do what you have to. Well said. The thing that I think persists though is that when an artist has committed to a craft, they will do it. If they moonlight it, if they, whatever, they'll do it, and they'll do it for a long time, even if it becomes a hobby and a passion. Whereas entrepreneurship will quickly die and fade and become a quick relic of the past. And my relationship with her was really cool. She lived in Saratoga and now lives in Barcelona. But I got to spend time with her and learn all these things from someone that had made art. I went in her house. It was it was clear that she was an artist because decorated in a way that had character and panache and like sort of a je ne sais quoi, like can't describe it kind of space. And what I love about hanging with artists, doesn't matter what the art is that there's almost an undying commitment to self, to being authentic, to being true, that you can very hardly find in the world of entrepreneurship, because the world of entrepreneurship is like, be amorphous and figure it out and do whatever it takes to make it work. And I don't know, maybe it's the optimist in me, but I do hope that more entrepreneurs get to the place where they're like, just going to be authentic and I'm going to be me. And if the world doesn't like it, cool. I'm not going to play to the world's tune. I'm going to make the world attuned to me. I think we've in many ways attempted to be artists in the way that we present this podcast. We're not here to appease everybody. It's not going to work for everybody, but it's also not going to be the same as everybody.
Yeah.
And that takes a really deep commitment that, again, I hope more entrepreneurs
nor do we
adopt.
really care. I mean, again, none of it's scripted. We just come on and have conversations about what we're experiencing.
You didn't even know the topic.
Correct. And that's not that unusual.
I would say that's more usual than
correct.
Okay, so in closing, to wind this out.
But that's often the best way, because you're not forcing yourself into we're not forcing it into a box.
Yeah, just talk. Okay, so as we wind down, here's a question for you. When you think of the best artists in the world, you mentioned like Michael Jackson, you mentioned Dolly Parton. Who are some others that would come to mind? Could be any kind of art.
Right. So I don't know if I would. Yeah, I think Dolly Parton in her own right, but like even her, it's much more about how she gives back, how she gives books to schools. Probably gives more books than most book companies. So that has what draws me to her story more than anything at this point. For me, it's probably more authors, and I'm trying to think off the top of my. Well, I talked in one of our other episodes about Parker Palmer, someone whose writing has influenced me greatly, and so it might be people that others wouldn't necessarily even know, but they've influenced me.
I get that. Yeah, I think of when I look at the bookshelf, I'm like, all right, well, I got a lot of Ben Hardy. My mom left me a David Baldacci book. I think it's Stephen King. Like these guys have written like tons and tons of stuff. So here's my question: if art is the depiction of a problem, if we use that definition, is an artist constantly seeking new problems? Are they constantly observant of new problems? Like how would you define being an artist from the lens of like depicting a problem? Are they just attentive?
I think we need artists to help solve the problems.
Why?
Logic often does not solve problems. It's something that comes from a deeper place. And artists have a way of pulling out that deeper element. We tend to band-aid problems. Artists have a way of dissecting the problem and taking us in there and digging it out and cleaning out the bruise and doing the rest to help it heal versus just trying to fix the problem.
So it's their perspective.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's what I said about how I preached, where here's the problem, let's flip it on its head and look at it a different way, because the old way of looking at it does not work.
That to me is a great sort of descending testament to entrepreneurship. And I'm not intending to bash entrepreneurs. If anything, it's almost like call to arms, like, hey, let's solve bigger problems. Let's continue to add perspective. But let's not rest on the success of a business. Let's not rest on the success of our enterprise to stop solving problems. Because I do think that if there's a spectrum of creatives, entrepreneurs belong on that spectrum. And one of the biggest demands I see in the next 15 years is that the landscape between artists and entrepreneurs is going to shrink a lot, because we're going to need creative energy in business more and more and more, because quickly you can outsource intelligence fast. And if you can outsource intelligence, and in the way that at least I perceive AI today, AI can only access what has been accessed. What it can't do is draw lines of connection the way that a human can draw lines of connection. So I just think that this imagination piece is so critical.
And I think the artist has a way of, it's not, they might make money off their art, but it's not about the money first. Business and very much has become about business the money first.
Yeah.
Business first. And for an artist, they're just doing it because that's the art. And I think that's another mindset shift that an artist can help us make. That if it's about money, it's more than likely not going to solve a problem. It might solve your problem.
It's commerce. Yeah, it's commerce. It's food for thought. Listen, if you have an opinion on this, please share it with us. I'd love to know what you think, what comes to mind. You know, jump on Facebook, share this podcast and share what you think. Do you think artists are depicting a problem? Do you think that entrepreneurs are?
Well, and I would bet there's a lot of entrepreneurs listening that are saying, well, I'm not an artist. I'm not an artist.
Man, I hope that I get a whole bunch of hate mail about entrepreneurs
How about being an artist.
They're like, that's not me.
I'm not an artist.
Well, maybe this conversation inspires entrepreneurs to think more like artists and to perceive the long game and the passion and hire everything else except what you love. That I think you cannot argue with. If you want to argue with that, I will make as many hours as possible. Jump on this podcast. Let's have a conversation, me and you. And if you want to defend that, I'll go toe to toe. We'll go fist to fist for that.
Fist to fist.
That's right. Like on a Zoom screen, you know.
Oh no, we could do that too.
We can jujitsu that. all you want.
We could find a space to make
I'm
it
sure
happen.
we could rent a wrestling ring.
If we could do this on one side of a table, two sides of a table, we can make it happen.
That's fair. Yeah, we can definitely make it happen. Look, I want to know, we want to know what your take is. There's an artistry to this that obviously is complex, and there's multitudes of layers, but if we're playing a high level ball, we're going to talk about high level problems, and we're going to talk about high level differences and uniqueness and try to merge two worlds together. I think the world of artistry and entrepreneurship is inevitably intertwined. And if you are dissociated from that, you're missing one of the primary responsibilities as an entrepreneur. We are creatives that have found a way to merge solving a problem with business and creativity with business.
And it's not totally your fault. It's been beat out of you that you should not be a creative. And how do we help bring that creativity back in?
There's a great TED Talk by a guy named Ken Robinson. This is a great way to close. If you haven't listened to this TED Talk or watched this TED Talk, I encourage you, please go do it. Ken Robinson is a prolific name in the world of education. But his statement in this TED Talk was well done on a whiteboard, or a digital whiteboard where it's a cool story. And he was describing how, we've basically batched kids together by age. But, if we really want to be prolific in the future, we're going to have to stop batching people by age. We're also going to have to not have students boxed in by education. So he describes a story where a mom went to the school because her daughter was acting out and sat in with a parent teacher conference, and it just didn't go well. So try again. Mother's getting more and more frustrated because her kid just keeps getting in trouble at school. So tries all these options, frustrated, demoralized, sort of beaten down by the system, takes her kid to a psychiatrist. Big room, open space. Psychiatrist is talking to this kid. Mom is outside. And as the psychiatrist and the kid are talking, there's just friction. And the mom is outside getting emotional because she's feeling like the kid will never fit in school and doesn't belong. And all these teachers are giving her pressure about this kid just won't comply in class and constantly moving around and annoying everybody and causing all these problems. And finally, the psychiatrist leaves. I think the solution that they presented was medication. Psychiatrist leaves, and outside with the mom looks in on the kid, and they're having a discussion. Mom's losing it, breaking down. As they are there for a long time having this emotional conversation, they're looking into the room and there's music playing. The kid starts to get up and dance. And I'll never forget listening to Ken Robinson tell the story. He's describing what the psychiatrist says to the mom. Your daughter's not broken. She's a dancer. And it makes me emotional thinking about it because I dealt with this with a lot of players. The mom hears this for the first time and makes some new decisions. Daughter's not broken. She's just in the wrong fucking place. She's a dancer. So she takes her daughter out of school and puts her in dance school. And that girl goes on to become the most amazing, runs dance schools all over the world and performs on amazing stages and these incredible performances. But you couldn't label that kid a mathematician. And I think there is a tremendous mislabeling happening with the way we see our kids. If you're creative, don't waste it. If you have a creative kid, don't waste it. If you have a creative friend, don't burn it. If you have a creative partner, don't burn that out. Creativity, like we talked about with Matt Damon, is going to have a lot of bad ideas, a lot of really hard beats, a lot of big blunders and wasteful things. Do not waste that, because that is a 1 in a million chance.
Great end.
Ken Robinson, TED Talk. If you have any thoughts about today, let us know. Otherwise, we'll catch you on the next episode. Thanks for being here.